You're listening to the Talking 20 podcast. This podcast is for you if you're in your 20s and you're thinking, what the hell am I doing? We've all been there, and we want to talk about it. We're your hosts, Bridget O'Rourke and Mary Margaret Courtney, and we sit down with fellow millennials to chat about their journey and hear what they've learned along the way. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Talking 20. Today we are joined by Anthony DiFeo. Anthony was one of Mary's friends in high school, and when we interview someone that Mary knows and I don't, she always leaves me some jot notes so that I can make an introduction. And here's what I'm gathering from these notes today. You know those people who are like really, really funny and think outside of the box? There's always at least one of them in everybody's high school experience. Usually there's a group of them. Usually they're the improv kids, the drama kids. Usually they're Mary and her friends. So that's what I'm gathering today. That's what seems to sum up Anthony, and let me tell you why. Not only has Anthony studied improv and traveled around the world with theater, but in 2020, Anthony decided to take his worst idea ever and make a podcast about it. It's random, it's hilarious, and I have one very important question that I really want answered today, and that is, why? So we're going to get into that and more about Anthony's life. We'll talk about moving far away. We're going to talk about relationship stuff, career stuff. So buckle up and get ready to hear all about what his life is about. And don't worry, we will reveal his terrible podcast-worthy idea in just a few minutes. Welcome to the show, Anthony.
Wow, thank you. I am really glad I didn't get to hear that ahead of time because I was like on board, like, can't wait to hear how Mary described me. And what I got was like, it was a weird kid.
No, I got funny.
My jot notes were studied acting, and I started off with the questionnaire thing that we fill out.
Right.
Studied acting, great at improv, creative mind, did a lot of absurd theater, and then in brackets, so Bridget understands it's a type of theater performance, like comedy or drama. Took a theater show to the world stage in Cardiff, Wales, where he was a lead role, and then breaks down all the other crap that we'll get into. I don't want to give it away. Like, worked at Shopify, which I was like, I think.
Yeah, no, that's accurate. Okay.
Well, this is the last time we talked.
This is good to know because that means, and by the way, I don't disagree with your assessment, Bridget, but this means that
Thank you
translated that to, it was a pretty weird theater kid.
Okay, well, my translation
right.
was funny kid, not weird kid, but yes, I also knew Mary.
Right.
Yeah.
Apologies. You will have to deal with me projecting my insecurities throughout all of this. So
throughout this whole thing. All right, so let's get
exactly what we want.
Right into it and figure out how you two weirdos met.
Yeah, sounds good.
High school.
Yeah, there it is.
So we met. They're going to the same school. That's basically it. No, yeah, we were both the drama kids. We did plays, the improv team, all that stuff. And then we actually taught in a program class, whatever it was called, leadership class, where I don't know why, but I was like, yeah, I should do that with Anthony, where he was just a bully for like a full semester. No,
that reminds me of somebody.
Yeah. So I would go to school, I'd get bullied by Anthony, and then I would come home and bully you.
She would take out her insecurities on me, Anthony, so thank you for that.
Hurt people, Bridget.
Yeah. I hate how fair that is. I'm like reflecting back and I'm like, oh yeah, that was a good time. And then you were like, Anthony bullied me daily. And I was like, oh yeah, that was maybe a bad time.
No, it was fun. It was, yeah. And we had like such a good group of people. And we always used to joke and be like, we made drama cool, but like legit, we made drama cool. And some of those people are some of the coolest people I still know to this day. So
the weirdest thing about our high school is like, as I came out of high school and was like explaining how it went, I felt like I was so often lying and telling people that like I lived in a fantasy land. Cause I was like, listen, I like truly, I know the drama kids at your school were like weird, but like we were cool. Like we had like clout amongst the jocks.
And funny.
I swear.
Yeah. Like people liked us genuinely. I still tell some of the story, like some my favorite jokes is you and John Trevalio are obviously still besties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of my favorite stories is still when they put computers in the drama room, and often lots of groups of people like to hang out in that room. And he would sit there and fuck with people's assignments. So he'd like replace words with like whatever, like profanity. And
That's
my
like the
favorite was
worst
still,
thing you can do to somebody.
It's very
the
mean.
best was he waited for someone to go to print out an assignment and printed right before them. And so a thing came out of the printer. I just said, fuck you, across the paper. The kid grabs his assignment and was like, what the hell? But yeah, I was like, we were a funny group of people. And yeah, like anyway, I agree. I think people are like, yeah, okay, you think you were cool. And I was like, well, no one will ever know unless they were in it with us.
That's true.
Yeah. But yes, it was a great time. And then we went our separate ways when, well, you were a year older, so you graduated and never really looked back. Thanks. That's okay. But we made it without you.
I was trying to move forward. I had a few friends stay behind. My best friends actually stayed behind a year. And I was like, ooh, I can't cling to high school. I was also like, Mary and I both grew up in relatively small towns. And I think, and like no judgment to anybody who, is from a small town, but I think there are like kind of two, I don't know, like modes of thought that you adopt when you're from a small town. It's either like, I'm comfortable and I want to stay, or I cannot wait to get the fuck out of here. Can I swear on this pod? I don't even know what.
You can absolutely swear.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
Yeah, you can.
Okay,
You're
right.
You said fuck you earlier. But anyway, I was the second mentality, like very, very quickly. I was like, I cannot wait to get out of this small town. Like I had big city dreams. And so, so I like didn't really look back at high school at all. Cause I was like, where am I going?
Yeah.
Did you go to Toronto? Where did you go?
I did. Yeah. I pretty quickly, moved, to Toronto. I kind of like, I didn't move in with my girlfriend at the time, but I basically just like lived at her house as often as I could. And then once I got a full-time job, I immediately moved to Toronto. I was like, all right, later. I have income.
Nice. What did you go to school for again specifically?
I went to school. I went to school for probably one of the more useless things, I think, which was I went to school for like theater creation and development, which isn't even acting, though I worked as like a performer and actor. It's like about theater creation. Mine was a little bit weird. It was mostly theater creation in a collaborative space. But I like to joke that that's like basically just, I went to school so that I could make pretend. And then I was like, ooh, maybe like this isn't enough. So I did a minor in creative writing so that I could also write pretend. And collectively, I'm very good at pretend. So. And
you're talking about living in a fantasy world in high school, just like do you even exist?
A daily question. My goodness. Bridget, please.
He's for sure in a simulation.
Listen, you're going to need to stay away from my inner dialogue because that'll like put this whole thing into a matrix like spiral for me.
That's what the scientists will tell us, that the scientists that listen to our before chat. So it's all good.
They're listening now. They're like, this guy is fascinating.
Yeah. All right. Without further ado, we need to dive into our first topic of conversation. Let's start with this super funky, weird podcast. Can you tell us about it? What did you do? What was this podcast? Give us the news.
Okay, well, like every good white man approaching his 30s, I was like, I should do a podcast that like the world doesn't...
And female.
And females.
I feel like it's a disproportionately male endeavor. So
that is true.
I'm glad to hear that you two are, going on strong. But
thanks.
But yeah, like I really wanted to get back into like comedy and performance, and podcasting is just like a really great entry to making your own content. Like after years of theater creation, the overhead for making a show happen is like just crazy, right? So yeah, we thought like we could podcast really easily, and it would be nice to do a comedy podcast. And I had a lot of really cool ideas, but I think I also had a lot of jokes. And one of the jokes was so compelling that I just had to see it through. I joked that it would be really funny to have a podcast called 50 Weeks of Grey, in which we had one person watch the movie 50 Shades of Grey once a week for 50 weeks. And the title is really where it came from. And every time I like pitched podcasts to friends, like the good ideas would get a little conversation, but this joke would just explode. People were like commenting on how stupid it was, how ridiculous it was, and like would not stop. And I was like, man, that's like the most marketable thing then.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
One. Yeah. And so, the problem was that I could not convince anyone else to do this. Like, and there's no one that I hate or love enough to put through watching that movie that many times. So this was like I'll have to do it myself kind of thing. And yeah, and we did.
You really suffer for your art.
Listen, I commit. That was lesson one.
What's fantastic about that story is that most people who create a podcast is because they're like sitting on their couch and go, we should create a podcast about that. But they never actually do it. So I was like, oh, this must have been just like Anthony hanging out with some people and they were like, no, I'm going to do it. No, I'm going to do it. And then you being you was like, no, but I've said I'm going to do it. So now I actually have to do it. So the fact that you've been like, I am actively trying to pitch a podcast. I found the one. It's super like, to me, I'm like, this is just not efficient time. Like, this is a time not well spent. But the fact that you're like, no, we're going to do it and let's go.
I like really commit, good idea or bad. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I think that the crazy thing about watching any movie, honestly, this frequently and like with that pace is that you hit a point of no return and it's like shockingly early. Like if you've watched this movie 10 times, okay, you've spent 10 weeks where you've sacrificed 2 hours of your time. I'm just like, man, am I really going to throw it away even at this point? And then you hit 25 and you're like, okay, now like it would be stupid to quit, right? So yeah, the discipline is mainly shame-based.
So like, what did you talk about on it? Like, how can you come up with different topics of conversation every week?
Yeah, well, okay, there's a few ways. One was like I'm just like joyously naive and easily enthusiastic. And so like even like, 15 weeks in, I was like, hey, you know what I just realized about this scene in the movie? And like, I can talk about those things forever. Just because it's like, I'm really, really enthused by really stupid things. But after a while, we really had to start digging and like anything became relevant content. And like, we started chasing ridiculous threads. There's one episode where I just came to the table with every unhinged conspiracy theory that I had, digging into the pieces of the plot that absolutely weren't there. Like, is Anna's mom, Anna is one of the main characters, is her mom actually murdering her ex-husbands? Why does she have 3? Let's dig into that. There was another episode where I actually found a replica or an AI program that is free and it lets you like have like an AI friend. It's honestly pretty interesting. But I was like, what if we just spend the episode training it to be Christian Grey? Like, can we make this AI program want to be a dominant? It is, and then like halfway through, I realized that I'm just like live sexting a robot with my friends. But like, there's a lot of content that can be dug out.
Is that interesting to listen to?
I don't know. I still don't know. I've listened back to it. The more you listen to the podcast, though, I think the more clearly unhinged I got. And like, I started, there's a whole notebook of my notes because I took notes like every week. And my notes even start like just getting ridiculous. Like I start like 40 something weeks in, I'm like, oh, by the way, the IT guy in that one scene, his name is Andrew. It's like, why the fuck does any of that matter? It doesn't. But on week 45, any bit of content, like any bit of new information that you can pull out of a movie is significant.
Yeah, did you try to find like discrepancies and like continuity issues? Or
I did. Yeah. I tried to find any sort of plot hole. Like my favorite one is like, I think this was like 30 something weeks in. I realized the movie starts or pretty early in the movie. There's like an interview scene between Anna and Christian, the main characters, and Anna loses her pencil and then Christian gives her a pencil, and like it's like a totally suggestive thing because she keeps like biting on the pencil and he finds that hot. It's ridiculous. But at no point in the entire scene, like she stalls the interview because she lost her pencil and then proceeds to never write anything down because she came with a recorder. And I just think it's so ridiculous that they like made it a thing and then she didn't write like even the date, like nothing. She didn't use it at all other than to just chew on it endlessly. So like, yeah, like I only found like really, really tiny minor things that I think only matter to a person who's watched it 20 plus times. But yes, I did.
Had you seen it before starting this podcast?
Only once, a long time ago. I used to work at a movie theater, and so I actually worked when it came out, and that's a whole thing too. Those were just like sweaty theaters. It was like really, really weird.
Ew.
And
when you work at a movie theater, like you're in charge of cleaning up those sweaty theaters.
Yeah. It was uncomfortable, but I think a lot of people, a lot of like middle-aged women needed that release, and I've come to appreciate that.
So will you ever watch it again?
You could not pay me. I mean, you could, but like you'd have to pay me a lot. Like I did not make enough off like content that you could pay me. But the funny thing was, we were like, listen, if this goes viral, I only ever watched, until the last few weeks, I only ever watched the first movie. And we were like, if this ever goes viral, we have to do the sequel, right? And just like we have 3 seasons of this potentially.
Oh my god!
We could even start doing unrelated movies like Liam Neeson's The Grey and just see how that goes. But we like
is that the one where they get eaten by wolves or something?
Yeah, I've actually never seen it, so it would be interesting to me. But
Sorry,
he fights wolves.
Spoiler alert.
Gets eaten by wolves.
Gets eaten by wolves. Big spoiler. But yeah, you would have to pay me a lot of money to ever watch that movie again. I still like the soundtrack, which has a lot of like pop songs. If they ever come on a random Spotify playlist, if I am within earshot, I will 1 leave or 2 just scream to please change it. Sometimes Netflix likes to recommend 50 Shades. It's like, you've watched this 50 times.
It knows.
I think you want it again. And when you hover over it and it starts playing the preview, there have been times where my fiance has just like left it on because she's like texting and trying to find what she wants to watch. And I have like yelled, I'm like, please move it, anything, I will die.
That's how I feel about the musical Grease.
Yeah, that's
really.
Fair, I can imagine.
Oh, I love.
Oh
Grease.
yeah.
You know, if you did Grey's Anatomy, you have like 17 years of content there.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I think we can change it from 50 weeks to just like 10 years of Grey. Like there is so much content.
And then he went insane.
I think it would be okay because it's progressive. You know what I mean? The biggest problem was that I was watching the worst movie. There's a really great concept that defines this well. So I apologize to the content creator, but they called it like the valley of mediocrity, and it's like it's not bad enough to be like funny, and it's not good enough to be good. It's just so middling that like it's kind of mind numbing. And That describes this movie really well. And like, yeah, at a certain point, you're just like, this isn't good, but like, it's just not good in a boring way.
Yeah, it's not good enough to be interesting. It's just literally middle ground blah.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how, like, I watch new stuff and my ADD brain's like, I can't focus on this one movie I've never seen before. Like, I don't know how every week you sit down and you're like, I'm going to watch this.
Yeah, did you
like,
ever
I know
nap?
what happens here. I'm going to have a nap, going to go to the bathroom, make some dinner.
Social commitment. Like, the fact that I had to talk about it and like have content, I was hungry for any new bit of insight. And so like, yeah, you just suffer through. But yeah, people did question. They were like, there's no way you're watching it all the way through. 100%. And yeah, my partner would vouch for it. An unintentional victim of this whole thing because of the pandemic.
I was going to say, did she have to like be there for this whole extravaganza?
Yeah. We got like 6 weeks in and then the pandemic hit, something along those lines. And so like, yeah, she couldn't even go anywhere. Like she was just, I'm watching it. So you're either in or you're out.
Well, so she's marrying you, so she's in, I guess.
That's true.
Yeah.
You've already been through the worst of it, really.
It's true.
Can you imagine having a boyfriend in the pandemic who won't stop watching 50 Shades of Grey?
No, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't.
She can.
She can. And then she said yes. Weird.
I know.
Weird.
I know. The greatest triumph of this whole experiment.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Let's talk about the podcasting side of it. So, Did you do a lot of research going into it about podcasting, or like why did you decide to make it a podcast and not a YouTube channel or a book or something like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I had been researching mostly like media trends, and podcasting is like such an evolving medium and had been growing so rapidly that we were pretty excited about it. We were like, I think this is a great way for us to make content and like develop an audience without having to compete with like YouTube algorithm, intense video editing. Yeah, I mean, this was never going to be a live thing. And so podcasting just made a ton of sense for us. I think another thing is we didn't really plan on this blowing up, and it didn't really. We had like a modest following and a really awesome, loyal fan base, but we wanted to just commit. And so the structure of this actually really worked for us as like creatives. I made it with a few of my friends who were also like in the theater and performance scene. And for us, like this concept of we're going to make a piece of art that like lasts 50 weeks. So many podcasts are abandoned after their first, I think it's like 3 to 5 episodes. And we wanted to challenge ourselves to get past that and get over that hump and have this like committed joke even that would force us into a creative process. And so, yeah, I think just like a culmination of all those things, we're like, you know what, let's like get those barriers out of the way. Let's do it in a medium we all feel confident that we can do. And let's just like ship something.
That's very similar to what drew me into podcasting. Was I fucking hate social media and I need it for my job and it pays me. Like I get paid by the work I put out on fucking Instagram and it's the worst. I wish I didn't need it. But in learning more about podcasting, I thought the same thing where I was like, it isn't even remotely as big as I think it's going to get. I think it's going, the amount of money that's going into it is a little insane. So when we started doing ours, I thought, this is a great way to understand a new marketing tool from the baseline. I mean, it's been out there for a while, but yeah, like both Bridget and I being in marketing, we were like, this is definitely something you need to understand and be able to work as it grows and see. And like, we wouldn't have predicted a year ago we'd, be doing what we're doing and have the experience that we have and all that jazz. But it's super cool that you guys had that angle where it was like, okay, this is something as artists that we should understand and play with.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that resonates a ton. I think what we realized too, though, was I work, my real job is also in marketing. And so we realized, though, I was like, man, the marketing part of this is still such a big challenge. And like, I think the reason that I've now, we sort of hung up our podcast. We had like another endeavor. We're talking about whether we want to get back in or not. But part of the reason that we hung things up was I was like, yeah, you need to like really invest in this space, understand this space, make connections in this space. And as a whole, I wasn't super passionate about the podcasting sphere and the podcasting realm. And so it became like really, really heavy work to start marketing the podcast itself. And you know that, like, I mean, I think we knew that going in, but just having to still do those things and like get your socials out there, connect with other podcasters at your level and start like building that community of podcasters is like such a big thing for artists to do. And it's just a challenge when you're thinking about content creation. You don't want to think about how you're actually going to get your content in front of an audience. You just really want to make things.
That was the sickest joke. We started and then we were like, how do we optimize our podcast? Let's learn. Let's talk to some people. And we like talked to a professional. It was like, so social media is just the most important part. And I was like, well, fuck me. All right. That's a sick joke because I did not want to do this. And we've noticed that like, our social media is like very intentional. And sometimes I want to throw my phone at a wall.
Yeah, 100%. I know. It's really funny too, because like in the advent of TikTok, I think like how you market yourself has really, really changed too. And so like, I wish I could go back and just like change my perspective on social media marketing. Because so much of like what TikTok's angle is just like authenticity and like ridiculousness. And I feel like they would have really loved the idea for our podcast. I was gonna say,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
But all of our marketing was so polished, and that was the wrong angle for TikTok. If we had done a better job of just being really messy about like video recording our sessions and just throwing them up on TikTok when we said something really fucking stupid, I think we would have been looking at just like a different level of engagement. Not that that's like completely off the table, even though it's done, but yeah, like it would have been, it would have helped us just like enjoy what we were doing instead of trying to create these like polished Instagram posts.
Totally. Yeah. Sometimes I realize that when we put stuff out, it's like the stuff that I don't spend or Mary doesn't spend as much time on is the stuff that gets the most traction.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating.
Yeah, we're trying. Like we've openly been like, this year we're going to be more authentic, but I can't. Like unpolished work is just, it's ridiculously hard.
It's so hard. Yeah.
And I just hate TikTok. Sorry, TikTok, but I just can't do it.
How dare you? I guess your
That's
Gen Z audience is gone.
Yeah, they didn't exist. We started this Talking 20 podcast for millennials, and all the people who are like in their 40s and 50s are like, I love this because they have the hindsight. Right? And like Bridget, like we joke because we started this podcast and I think at the time I had 18 months left of being in my 20s. I was like, it's a really good time to start a podcast about being in your 20s. But we're kind of learning through the way that like it's kind of hindsight is 2020, that people in their early 20s don't know what to talk about because they're going through the shitstorm,
right?
And they can't see out of the fog yet. Like they're like, this is a joke and I hate my life. I don't want to talk about it.
I feel like you inadvertently walked into the cheesiest tagline, by the way, is that hindsight is talking 20.
Yeah, we used it for 2020 last year, right?
Incredible.
Yeah, we used it for. No, we used it.
Maybe we
used hindsight is 2020 for a podcast. We were reflecting on last year's 2021, and we put hindsight as 2020. Yeah, there are a lot of puns that come along with 20. You'd have no idea, but there are.
I believe you.
So if you had to do a podcast, the same kind of podcast on a different movie, not Bray related, what would you do?
A different color.
Yeah. I mean, definitely 50 First Dates. I feel like it's perfect. It just fits the format really, really well.
Oh, that is a good one. You've thought about this before.
No, I was just thinking of the first movie with 50 in the title, so that I didn't have to work.
Why does
too
it have
hard.
to be 50? Like, do like
It's a
the 10
year.
things 10 things I hate about you, and then it's 10 weeks.
Like how
Well,
to lose a guy in 10 days.
This is
Hey!
10-day long shindig.
is our Patreon series, right? Where you can get exclusive. I'm going to do it in 10 days. 10 things I hate. How to lose a guy in 10 days. And yeah, that's how
Okay.
you get more content out of them.
It's just
More
brilliant.
content.
He's got the
That's
whole
the
thing
TikTok
figured
account.
out. That's the TikTok.
I like that you call it brilliant when I'm just like, oh, this movie has a number in it, and that'll be days or weeks.
But again, that's what happens to us. We joke, like we put stuff out and people are like, wow, you guys just really have your shit together. And we're like, we made that up 7 minutes ago because we knew we needed to do something. And then we quickly made up something that we didn't like and we put it out and you all love it. We spend weeks deciding on something and like, you know, okay, how should we do this? Making different decisions, trying to strategize, and it gets nothing. So
Yeah, no,
brilliance, I think, is in the like, just keep it moving.
yeah, that was our goal. I would say though, like in terms of other movies, I think my like taste in movies has just been like completely destroyed as a result of this. I used to be like really, really critical of movies, but one of the episodes that we did was comparing 50 Shades of Grey to Twilight for very obvious reasons. Is like 50 Shades was a fanfic, and I've seen Twilight. I hated Twilight. Watching it, I was like, this is a good movie. This is it. I like this movie.
What?
I know. It's not
Just like
a good
anything
movie.
in comparison to
Not a
watching
good
something
movie.
50 times, you're like, I'm in. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just so appreciative of like the plot that they had, because there's like a villain, and I was like, oh my god, something to like intentionally hate. Thank you. It was great.
And so doing the podcast itself, what was a learning experience, either like creatively or being on that format? What did you take away from it other than it's a horrible movie?
Yeah, I think like the hard thing is really the organization. There were a couple of really key lessons that I learned. I mean, one was like, you know, I had partners in it, and like when you're working on, I kind of knew this, but like in different capacities. But when you're working on something creative, especially with your friends, the lines, like your swim lanes and your the lines of work just get really, really blurry, right? Who's going to own what? You know, my friend Ross, he was doing so much of the heavy lifting, which I felt was only fair because I was really driving the content. But from his perspective, it's like, hey, I'm spending the most hours here on the podcast. And it's like, yeah, that's tough. That's not fair. And so we really had to, like, we needed more transparency between all of us on just like the work that we were doing and how to set those boundaries and set expectations with friends. And then on the other side, I realized that, dang, I work a full-time job, and content creation is a lot of fun, but there's a lot more work that comes along with it. And I didn't really have a lot of good ways to protect my own energy, honestly. And so like I was on pretty quick tracks to burnout, just because we were like trying to publish content weekly, trying to market for it, trying to put out creative for it. And like on top of that, yeah, I've got like a full-time job. I travel for work sometimes. I have a relationship. Like there are a lot of things that I need to deal with week over week. And I just like didn't even think about my own well-being while I like added something to my plate.
Preach.
Totally. Yeah. Preach. We feel
But
ya.
it's interesting because having I think a lot of people think about podcasts, which is why so many people want to do them, is they have no idea what it takes to put a podcast together. And a good quality one at that. Like we work so hard on keeping, as we said, like our content and everything to a certain standard, and the recordings and the video work and everything. Bridget's the one who does the heavy lifting for us. And right now she's the one with the like crazy schedule trying to manage these things. And it's a lot. It's hard because you're like, okay, this is like an outlet and it's fun, but we also take it seriously and like we have goals and objectives for it. And yeah, the first thing that goes is like your sanity. It's the first thing that's allowed to go out the window before other responsibilities. And we're working on like, okay, we said we were going to do like these posts or we were going to do this. We can also like relinquish that. No one's expecting anything from us, which is where our favorite thing was we came up with like, let's do seasons, because we just hadn't got our shit together for the beginning of 2022.
Yeah.
And we hadn't recorded anything, and we were like, fuck, we're so behind. But we were behind for what we decided. Like,
Yeah.
nobody knew. Nobody cared. Like I watched your stuff on Instagram, Anthony, and I didn't notice if a week went by and there wasn't anything posted. But on your own, you put it on yourself because you're like, that's what it's going to be. That's the plan. I can't fall apart. But it's like, no, but your sanity needs to not be the first thing going out the door. No one's expecting anything from you. Just drop it. Yeah, that's what we did. We were like, let's just say we're starting season 2 in a few weeks. And there you go. Like, that tells a nice story. And everyone was like, congratulations on season 1. Oh my God, you guys killed it. And we were like, we're like losing our shit right now. Like, we're so sideways.
100%. It's intense. And like, honestly, my recommendation for anybody who's like entering the creative space right now is just like, hey, set expectations and boundaries with yourself. Like, you need to know when you are in need of one of the things. It's really funny too, because like the creator space is something that I'm like interested in researching lately. And like one of the greatest challenges, I mean, monetization and like making money enough to like support people pursuing their passions is obviously huge, but the drive to do that causes so many creators to burn out and just stop completely. And so like, you know, find a way to make trades with yourself, because if it means that you can create for longer, but you have to take like a break or you have to like slow down your publishing schedule, just do it. Like, yeah, take the time you need to do it right. I know that it's like, yeah, I know that there's like a drive to just like be out there, be relevant, publish something and like make it perfect. But I think like everyone needs to kind of like take it at their pace and find their rhythm. Because that was the other thing is like, after a little while, we were like, man, we do not need to put the time that we're putting into some of these like Instagram posts that we're putting, you know what I mean? We got past that barrier. Like, we have some people who like trust us now on our socials. Let's just like ship less polished, more fun shit.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, it's important.
And it's so hard as well because, you know, you listen to podcasts and you watch YouTube channels about being a creator and all they say is like publish content, quality or quantity over quality and all this stuff. And it's hard because you are holding yourself to a standard. It's hard to just put out stuff that you're not fully confident in.
Well, you're the product. So
yeah,
it does feel like if people don't like it, I'm not being liked. Like, there is always that inherent, which was like my least favorite part of being an artist and walking. Like, a big reason I quit the theater world was because I hated auditions, because I was like, this is stupid. None of you get to judge me. I am not going to be what gets me paid. I want to have a job separate to my identity. And yeah, so there's like that still, it exists with podcasts and creating content. You're still kind of like, it's my voice. Like, I think I'm annoying. The constant joke is like, Mary, what's my longest rant, Bridget? 5 minutes?
7.5 minutes.
Damn, what was it on? You're not allowed to go into it. And
I blacked out.
I think we all did.
Bridget got to edit that, and it was like, for your audience, it was just an exhale from Mary, but for Bridget, 7.5 minutes.
I have it saved in a folder just to like throw back in her face one day. Listen. Okay, so let's move on to our next topic. So clearly, let's go back to your early 20s. You're clearly a very creative person. So was it a no-brainer to go to school for the arts, or did you ever think of going for something else? Did you want to take a safer route? What was that decision like?
Yeah, it's really funny because my parents have been supportive of me being a creative, but both my parents are immigrants from Italy, and so like their understanding of success is job security and family. And I don't think that's a bad definition at all. It's just like, it wasn't really mine at any point. And so I was always very, very interested in pursuing arts, creativity, or like anything that let me pursue my passions. Even like I spent just like an absorbent amount of time on the internet because I love the internet. And like my parents didn't really understand how that would ever translate into a job. I work in tech now, so it did. But back then, they were like, why don't you become a teacher? Like, you're good with like kids, and I think you'd make a great teacher. And I was like, we can like explore it, but I really want to go into theater and acting. And they were like, for teaching? I was like, no. So I actually did, when I started university, I was actually a double major in English and theater. And like English was my primary and theater was my secondary. And that was honestly mostly to appease my parents. But when I honestly, like halfway through my first year, all of my English classes were just like so dead. Like the people who were there, they didn't, a lot of them, I shouldn't say all of them, but a lot of them did not care. And it was clear that like they were there for some sort of credit. They weren't sure what they wanted to do. And I think that's fine. Like we were 18, 19, you know, it makes a lot of sense to not really have a direction. But I was like working with a bunch of young, ambitious theater majors at the same time. And they were so passionate, so hardworking. Like the demand from the theater program was super, super high. And every one of these people was like matching it and like with enthusiasm. And I was like, I want to be wherever these people are going. Like I can't not chase whatever this energy is. And so I told my parents, I was like, I'm full-time theater. Like whatever that leads to, I'm going that way. And like I'll have English as a minor maybe, or like I ended up taking creative writing as my minor. But yeah, like I did consider what a safe route would look like. And it bored the hell out of me. And I knew that if I was going to take that route, I would be pursuing something that wouldn't make me happy. And so, yeah, I just like decided to commit. Like I said, good idea or stupid idea. I'm very, very committed to whatever I say I'm going to do.
Yeah, well, it's cool that there's like an instinct in there where even at a young age, you're like, I got to go for this or else I'll always regret it and wonder why. But there is a sense like, I know when I was applying to schools, I was not thinking about like careers. It was still kind of like, no, I can do this. Like I can be the actor. I can work in that industry. I love the people. I love the community. But as you go through school, you learn so much about the business and you learn so much about why it's tough. And you mentioned it earlier, like putting on a theater production and how expensive it can be. Did it excite you still where you were like, okay, no, I'm going to make it work in this world. There are people that do it. This is just the lifestyle I live. Or was there a bit of like, but I also want to like have a retirement plan and have like all these things that as an adult you start to consider and then you get overwhelmed by this decision you made when you were 18, 19 years old?
Yeah, that's, did I have existential dread?
Sum it up. That's the question.
Great question. Honestly, no. I like kind of came to terms with I'm either gonna really make it or I'm going to scrape by. And I was pretty comfortable with that. There was no part of me that thought like, I'm going to fail really, really hard. And this is like a super privileged place to come from. Like I have a family that I know would support me if anything went horribly, horribly wrong in my life. And so, yeah, I just had that security always. And like it's a really, really privileged thing to be able to say, but it gave me the confidence that like, I can just kind of chase the thing that I really want to chase. And I mean, it didn't end up working out. Like I'm not a famous actor. I'm not I don't work in theater anymore. Similar to you, Mary, I was very, very tired of people judging me in auditions and telling me that I was or was not good enough for a role, or like I was just short, I should try for a different one, or like nothing, just like crickets. And so I really wanted to like, I realized I wanted to be creative and make my own work. And that's like always been the goal. But yeah, I just had like confidence that I'd figure it out. Wherever I landed, I'd figure it out. And like, I wasn't gonna I think the only decision I would regret is not like trying that and not finding out for myself, because I think it took me, investing in acting and investing in theater to realize that like I actually don't think I want this long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you learn a lot about yourself at that time too. Like you're young and you're scraping by or whatever, and you learn about those things that you value, the people in your life that are going to stick by you, and you start to envision like things you want, and if it's all tied to this thing you have no control of, which is I'm going to go into an audition room and someone's going to like me and they're going to hand me a paycheck, which also can sometimes come with like we can cancel your contract and pay you it at any time, and then you just don't have a job anymore. And also, even if you get like a 2-year contract, in 2 years, you have no idea where your money's coming from. Yeah. So there's just like, if you really learn what you're made of, and like, for me, I'm like, people in that industry, there's a love for the craft, there's a skill to it, but there's like a desire to chase that lifestyle as well. And if you don't have all that, you can't keep it up.
100%. And like, but there are great stories of, people in all industries that like make it past their like prime, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Steve Carell, I think Ken Jeong as well. I think that's his name. Really sad if I screw that up. But like, those are two like comedic actors who like, Ken was a doctor, and then he was like, I really want to try making it as an entertainer, and he ended up pursuing acting and making it. And I think like, I that's not my path, but like, yeah, there's even now, I still kind of have that same mentality that I had entering university, which is like, I think I could do it. Like if I really put my mind to it. I mean, I watched 50 Shades of Grey once a week for 50 weeks. Like what else can life throw in my way?
Yeah, I get that too sometimes where I'm like, if I had the discipline I have now and the like desire to follow through with things, which I just didn't have when I was younger.
Yeah.
I have that, like, I don't know if it's like just a delusion of grandeur, but I'm like, I think I would fucking kill it in that industry if I did it. But yeah. I like my house with my mortgage, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I know. And super fair. It's super reasonable. And why people like us quickly head to burnout by taking on more than one thing at a time.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that, you wanted to get the fuck out of wherever you were living in this small town. So was it a huge culture shock moving to Toronto? I also moved from a small town. I moved from Orangeville to Toronto, and I found it just like, I didn't know how to get around anywhere. I didn't know how to do anything. It was like just this crazy new world opened up. How did you feel moving?
Before you answer, I'd like to correct that Anthony used to call Orangeville bumfuck nowhere.
That's true.
In high school.
That's true.
He thought that we were so far away, which like now is not that far.
I know. It's hilarious. Legitimately throwing stone from a glass house. Like I lived what, 20 minutes away from you? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and everyone, I'd invite people over, and Anthony would be like, I'm not coming, sure, in bumfuck nowhere. It's just Orangeville. It's Orangeville. I don't know.
Honestly, I just didn't want to come to anything.
That's fair. That's fine. I get it.
No.
Anyway, sorry, go on.
Hilarious story about this. Like, when I got to university and started getting invited out to Toronto things, I literally had a conversation with my parents where I was mad at them for sheltering me. I was like, I don't know how to ride the fucking subway. Like, everyone's like, what do you mean it's a straight line? And I'm like, but there's 2 lines and it's a U and I don't understand how to go back and forth. And it's like so embarrassing.
What is north and south?
Yeah, like it's the easiest subway line. And I think back and I'm like, oh my God, that's so ridiculous. Even the buses, like everything about it is so easy. But I was like really intimidated by my spaces. I was like scared of everybody and I couldn't be left alone. Like I needed to travel with a friend because I was like, I would have friends who were like, just meet me
the buddy system.
Yeah. They were like, meet me at this coffee shop on, Bloor and whatever. And I'd be like, oh, I don't know.
Can you come get me?
Yeah. Could you meet me at the station and then we could maybe walk together?
My God.
It was so embarrassing. So yes, I definitely had that kind of culture shock.
And at this point, we didn't have like GPS and stuff like that. Like we couldn't just pull. I mean,
No,
we
I
did a
did.
little bit, but it
I
wasn't
did.
super reliable.
I appreciate you trying to let me off the hook, but I had a phone. I had every tool.
Bridget talks about moving. She went to Ryerson, and she talks about the first time she like, where did you go? You went downtown from your.
Yeah, I walked from my residence, which was at which was like a 3-minute walk from Yonge and Dundas subway station, and I walked to Yonge and Dundas subway station, and I was like, oh my god, I did it. I can't believe I made it.
That's huge. I'm proud of you.
It was huge. Thank you. It was a big milestone for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so my question. So you finished up school, and there's the daunting reality. Well, we already kind of asked this.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I mean, no, I'll ask it anyway, sorry.
Sure.
So yeah, you finish up school, there's the daunting reality of life as an artist.
Yes.
And it must start creeping in.
Questions are so dramatic.
Literally was just like, this just spewed out of my brain earlier today. But yeah, you have this daunting, okay, rewind. I'm going to improv it. Okay, so we get to our final years of school, and it's always stressful because now it's like, now this is serious. Your safety net's gone. School's gone. There's no grade left to do. Unless you go back into the school system.
Yeah,
there's no grades left to do.
Oof. Terrifying.
Yeah, but there is like, you're like, okay, now I got to like go do this thing that I've been setting out to do. And when you're in school and you go back to see like family members, people ask the question, what are you doing? And you're like, well, I'm studying this. And when I graduate, I'm going to do this. And then the reality hits. It's like, now go do that thing. What was your game plan? Were you like, all right, actor world? What was in your head at that time?
I had a like minimal game plan. I was like, I'll kind of figure it out. I was working part-time at a movie theater. I was managing there. I was a long-termer there. And the one nice thing I had was immediately leaving university. We actually took one of our university shows that we had created, and we were selected for the World Stage Design Festival. I think this was in 2013, which was being held in Cardiff, Wales. And this was like huge for us because they... We kind of had a bit of an in, which helped, but they choose like a few reps from around the world, and we were we sort of submitted this physical theater show. It's like a very dancey piece, and our premise was like, we really worked on body as design, and so we were all in on getting this show overseas immediately after school. And then once we got it overseas, we're like, okay, well now we have to bring it back. This is a show that performed on an international stage. This is huge. So I got to cling to that for a couple of years after university, where I was like, well, we're taking our international show back and we're trying to make it happen locally, and we're trying to get that funded. And so, yeah, I could say that, I was working as an actor in that capacity. I was also just like doing a couple short films and things like that. And so when people asked, that was really what I was pursuing, was like, how do I become...
You were a working actor.
I was a working actor, and
you're in the biz.
Trying to figure out how to make it full time. I also like co-ran the theater company that we had this show on, and so we were trying to figure out how do we make this like a sustainable thing where we're like constantly putting on shows and getting enough income to pay ourselves, which was like obviously the biggest challenge. So yeah, immediately out of university was not a big deal, but hilariously, and this is like a real thing, and I shame my mom for it every time. At our graduation ceremony, my parents like obviously drove me, and my dad generously like immediately, this is like 10 minutes after the ceremony's done, my dad's like, I'll go get the car. So we're like sitting down waiting, and my mom's like, so what's next? I hope you don't think you can coast. And I was like, Mom, I graduated 10 minutes ago. If you could just chill for like, I don't know, a week, that would be solid.
Yeah, could I like have a nap maybe, and then we'll talk about it? That's amazing. That's fantastic. So, okay, on a side note, was that the show where you had to get like crazy fit and you were on like a super strict regiment? I remember we connected at this point, and we hadn't talked for a while, but you were telling me about a show where you had to get like crazy in shape.
Yeah, we were doing like our abstract, avant-garde theater thing, and we were making a show that was just kind of like trying to visualize toxic masculinity in like a way that would help like hit people just a little bit different, like trying to communicate how the like mindset of toxic masculinity can affect and shape young men. And so the way we did that was we made a show that was like physically challenging on the performers, and the objective was for every night's performance to really like put the performers to their literal physical limit. And so, we worked with a personal trainer, and we had all these like really intense physical movements that would exhaust us. And yeah, we had to train like really, really hard for it, because like we had to make it to the end of the show, but just barely. And it was really interesting too, because like the more we did the show, the more in shape we got, and the easier the show was. And we realized that in our first run. And so what we had to do was actually like make a show that was bigger than us and like stronger than us. And yeah, it was really, really, it was a really interesting time, but we had to show like a lot of discipline to make that happen.
So, like, what kind of movements were this? Can you explain what you mean by, like, what did you have to do in the show?
Yeah, we, like, basically the whole thing was a sort of, when I say physical theater, you can imagine it as, like, kind of an interpretive dance piece. But we took, like, we made sure every one of our movements was difficult. So if we were trying to tell a story, like, there was probably my favorite scene is we did this one scene where, the boys were playing keep away from one of the ones that they felt was weaker with a ball, which was really an orange, which was a weird metaphor, but we're going to breeze past that. And instead of just like throwing it around, we did what are called like tiger rolls. And if you're not familiar, these are like kind of a football exercise where it's usually involving 3 people, and one person will roll under the other, and then that person will, from a plank position, hop over them and then land and roll, and it continues in this sort of pattern. And so,
oh my God.
Was also a TikTok trend at one point.
Oh, wild. I actually didn't know that.
I bet you would have gone viral for that.
We were ahead of the game on this one. And so we did it with the 4 boys actually doing that. And like keeping the ball away from one of them. And so every one of our movements, like every piece of our story was, some sort of like explosive or sustained physical movement that was just tough. And like, we wanted to make it interesting. We kept it a small crowd so that the audience would be close and constantly see like, oh, that guy's struggling. Like he's going to give out in a second. And, we made a bunch of fumbles and mistakes often because we were tired, but like, it became a part of the show. It was the whole thing was physically taxing, and that was kind of the point.
Terrifying.
So cool. That's so cool.
As a performer, it was, because like, I would get normal jitters as a performer, but this was like, oh man, I'm sore. And like, I really hope I don't screw up the choreography that's coming just because I'm tired.
And it's like you set out, like sometimes you do a show, and I remember thinking like, man, at the beginning of the rehearsals, I could not do that. And now, like when we did a tap show, and at the beginning, I'm like, I can't do a 4-minute tap sequence. And by the end, you're like, I can do it. I'm still terrified I won't get through it tonight. But like, the goal is to get there and know that you can succeed, so that in front of an audience, you're not failing on your face. So the fact that you guys put that roadblock, like, no, but the goal is to not feel safe or like I'm going to succeed, is like my worst nightmare.
It was a big challenge. It was constantly scary. And like on top of that, we were acting, like we were trying to portray characters who, weren't necessarily ourselves. And yeah, when you are like physically exhausted, but mentally exhausted just generally, but like physically you're so tired, and you're like, okay, this is the scene where I die. And like, I need to then like, my partner is going to, really regret what he has to do, and it's like there's all this that you have to communicate to each other, and you're like, yeah, but I can't breathe, like I'm so fucking tired. Yeah, it was a lot of fun though. And
That's
like,
wild.
That's wild. That's so cool.
That's cool.
So I'm going to move us along, Mare. I think we answered most of these questions. I'm going to move us along to
Yeah.
our next point. Our next talking point. So, Anthony, we asked you about your peaks and valleys. So, obviously, this show was one of your peaks, and going to school was one of your peaks. But you also have a valley that's a very common experience for people in their 20s, but we actually haven't talked about it on this show yet. So you mentioned did he mention this in the survey there? So you mentioned in the survey that you were cheated on by your then girlfriend in your 20s. Are you willing to talk about that?
Yeah, definitely.
Sweet. Okay. Mare, take it away.
Yeah. So, and Anthony and I are friends from the past, but I didn't know this until I read the questions.
Yeah.
So, I'm learning about it too. But yeah, so walk us through how you found out this was happening, where you were at in life at the time.
Yeah, this was really interesting, and like it was, so I was in a relationship of a long-term relationship too of 8 years, and I think like we kind of met in our first year of university, and like we had such a strong bond, and it's really, really interesting because I don't think there was like a point where we were like, it wasn't like we were like fighting or anything. We were like our same selves. And she ended up like making some new friends. And my ex was a very, very like bubbly and flirty person in general. And after 8 years though, like the trust is super, super high. And so like I never had a problem with that. I tend to be like really unintentionally flirty. I think like Mary, from like the day we met, that was like a thing.
1,000%.
Yeah. And honestly, for me though, it's like 99% oblivion and just like enthusiasm. I'm just like a puppy, and
it's like a mix of flirt with charisma. So the lines.
That's generous. That's very generous. But thank you. But yeah, I think like both of us were like generally pretty flirty people. And so we both just had like a ton of trust in each other. But it was interesting because like she had met a friend, and the interactions that they had with this person, they just like, something didn't feel the same. You know, it felt just different enough that I remember thinking, this is weird. Like I feel like a little bit of jealousy. And I remember confronting them about it. And like, you know, I've never been the controlling type. So like encouraged her to hang out with this person whenever they wanted. I've never been like a super jealous type. And so, but I remember letting her know. I was like, listen, I just like want to lay it out there because like, I feel like you have feelings for this person that are more than friendship. And like, I just want to let you know that I'm feeling uncomfortable. And like, I'm sure I didn't sound as like perfectly reasonable as
controlled.
I do. Yeah. But yeah, I sort of like set that expectation, and I was like, I just want to like check in with you. And she assured me that there was nothing there. And I was like, okay, cool. Then like, you know, that's all there is to this story. The lingering feelings like kind of remained for me, but one day they went out together. They like took a drive. This is really shitty too. They took a drive in like our neck of the woods, like where we grew up, and because there's like some beautiful scenery out there. And a day later, she had like let me know we were living together at the time. She like, hey, we kissed, and for me, like, that's a pretty big line. And I was like, well, this fucking sucks. And the way it went from there is I was like, this is like 8 years and you've kissed. Like, you know, my ex was really regretful. So like, I was like, okay, well, I want to try and work this out. And like, I don't want to like just give up on this. And I think that's like the most interesting part. I think it's like what happens after the cheating that is like super, super interesting. I think a lot of people would have drawn a line, and some people might have said like a kiss isn't bad. Some people would have been like, nope, cheating is cheating. It's over.
It's also a pretty intentional, it sounds like a pretty intentional choice versus just like, yeah, there's been like some blurred lines and then there's drinking and oh no, we kiss and I hate that. It's like we took a drive.
Yes.
Out of town to a nice romantic spot.
100% sober pretty intentional. And I think though, like what really broke my trust was like, after that, it's about like, okay, how do we trust each other again? How do we move on from this? How do I like look at you and not think about the person who, you know, betrayed me or like broke the boundaries that I thought were implied, but whatever. And I was like, I need to set those boundaries. And I was like, listen, like what happened. But I think like for me to have a healthy relationship with you, I need like, I can't have that person in our life. Like she was like, listen, we're just friends. Like, you know, what happened. But I think like, she was like, it was more like an exploration, which is weird. But she's like, yeah, what happened, but like committed to this relationship. And I want to maintain a friendship with that person. And I'm not the type to like give ultimatums or like, you know, say who you can and can't be friends with. But I was like, one great example was like her dad was having an art show and she was inviting this person to come along. And I was like, no, like, I don't think it's fair to have them like mingling with a family that I've like, you know, kind of established with yours. And she really wasn't willing to budge on that. And that broke my trust more than anything because I was like, now I am like telling you exactly as a partner what I need to like feel safe and secure. And you're telling me no. And that was like really the point of no return for our relationship because once you switch from telling me that like you will do anything to like keep us together to being like, well, except for that, I think it was like pretty clear that the respect and it just wasn't there.
Yeah, for sure. So what have you like brought from that experience into your other relationships? Like, has this made you not trust people as much as you used to? How do you feel now?
Yeah, I think at first, like it had a heavy impact in that way where I was like, ooh, I feel uncomfortable anytime somebody talks like flirts with somebody or like, you know, has that kind of behavior or mentions that they're hanging out one-on-one with somebody. I was like, big reflex. But I worked really hard to just like avoid that taking over. And like, it's so easy to catch when you know you've been hurt that way and you know that that's where it's coming from. Like, because the other thing that I'm really grateful for was I was like, you know what? She made that decision for me. Like she made it real easy to be like, hey, this person doesn't have my best interest in mind. I'm kind of glad I didn't spend the rest of my life with them. So I don't cling on to jealousy that way. Or if I do, I know that it's super irrational. The thing for me was actually like, I think that was like the first time in my life where I had set clear boundaries with somebody, which is so crazy. I've so consistently considered myself like a peacemaker and like the middle child who is like just trying to mediate. And and for the first time I was like, no, this is what I need. And there's like, this is it. Like I'm telling you how I feel and what I need. And that has been super, super impactful for me.
So, okay. So I have a few questions. First one being, so as soon as you guys break up, that's 8 years. You must have had like a lot of mutual friends and like this whole life together. What are the repercussions of deciding to end that? And, you know, obviously you're angry and there must be some like leftover resentment of some kind. So what is like the aftermath as soon as you're like, okay, I'm out?
Yeah. So it was really interesting because like my closest friends were like, yeah, like we support you 100%. But our friends that we had made really mutually were awkward to navigate. And so the ones that I like really cared about, I messaged when it was relevant, like just, you know, not about this, but like reached out and made sure that they were cool. And it was really, really encouraging to see that they were actually like all super supportive. I think one thing I realized about my ex is she may have developed quite shallow relationships with some of them, and there are some though where she had deeper relationships with, and I was like, you know what, those are sort of out of bounds for me, and I think those would be difficult for me to navigate anyway. And so you lose some friends in that way. I don't think there was anything like spiteful or anything like that. It's just like, yeah, I think there are some people that I have to part with, but for the most part, like the ones that we had as like truly mutual friends with both of us, I think they're comfortable to navigate it. And I also told her, I was like, listen, it's not my place. And now I'm saying it on a podcast, but I was like, it's not my place to tell them what you did. Like, you tell them, like, that's, you can control your story. You tell it however you want. I'm not interested in like petty revenge or anything like that. And it's been quite a few years, so I feel more comfortable saying it now, but like, yeah.
That's crazy big of you. Cause like a lot of people, you're just in instinct mode, right? Like you're not, I feel like when people get so hurt or they feel a lack of trust, you get like a distortion of reality a little bit. So you say things that you don't mean, you might, you know, change the narrative on some stories that used to be positive and all of a sudden it's negative because you're mad at that person. So the fact that you came out of that and you were like, I'm going to give you space to like be the villain in your own story or not, that's not up to me. And like, you just like, so healthy, like automatically just like go and do the healthy thing.
There's like so much clarity that comes from, honestly, just like being in the right in a situation like that. Knowing that I had at no point done anything to hurt this person actually like made it really easy to part ways with them, because I was like, I can leave here with my hands clean. And that whole like, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain, I feel like that would have been true the longer we stayed in touch. I feel like, you know, if we continued to have a relationship, even as friends, I just felt myself growing resentment and like wanting to act on it more and more. There were times where I was like, ooh, if people knew, but yeah, it like wasn't worth that, like it didn't deserve to live rent free in my head. You know what I mean? Like I just wanted that peace.
I love that saying.
Yeah.
Like
yeah. And so, yeah, being able to just walk away and be like, you tell it, you can own that to them, lie if you want to, but like, I'm just going to point them your way.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
So obviously it's hard to like see through the fog when you're in it. So what kind of advice would you offer for somebody who's going through a similar situation?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it though, Bridget. Like it's really hard to see through the fog when you're in it, and so like I think you need to give yourself space. The urge that I had at every point was, how do I resolve this as fast as fucking possible? Like, how do I either get back together with you today or end this, move out, like change my name, be in another country? Like, how do we just like fucking depart? And that was like it was just like not the right instinct. I wanted to have everything resolved so that I didn't have to like deal with the pain, the questions. Like I've known this person and they've been my counterpart for 8 years. Like where do I go from here? But taking the time to process it on my own, I set a hard boundary too. We lived together. I was like, either I move or you do. Like I can't live with my ex in a 1-bedroom in Toronto. I was like, I'm sorry, but like we need to change rooms. And she was like, I think we're close enough that we can like still sleep in the same bed. I was like, I don't like at all. And so to anybody who is going through that, listen, I highly recommend take space, take time, determine like what your core. I had really good advice from my now fiance. Her and I had been friends forever and like explored a romantic relationship after like a while after this. And what was awesome was she actually like did help me and gave me some of the best advice ever. she asked me to like line up what my, 5 core values are, however I wanted to summarize them, whether it be in words or sentences. Like, what are the things that mean the most to me? And then what are my boundaries that ensure that those core values stay in place? And when I did that, it was like, man, I'm putting way too much of my focus on this person who hurt me and not enough on like what I actually want, or like, how to protect myself. For like anyone who is like a sports person, there's like a really great quote that I don't know, you can make sound nicer, but like, there's the quote is like, losers focus on winners, winners focus on winning. And so like, I don't know, I've just kind of like rephrased that in my mind a lot to remind myself to focus on myself, like, and the things that I want, rather than the people that are like weighing me down, or like I feel are doing better than me. Because like the other part is, if they've cheated, especially if they've moved on, they have someone to confide in, and you've just lost your person. And so, yeah, it's just like, do what you need to do to focus on yourself and figure out exactly what you want. And I promise you, if you stay true to those things, that you will come out feeling a lot better. But it's not an immediate thing. It is going to take that time.
Mm-hmm. That's wild. I love it because you're like talking about prioritizing yourself and setting boundaries. You also put in like some extreme ownership on your own end. And it's like, be a nice person and be kind. But you can come out of it knowing like the fact that you were able to look back and be like, that's the first person I've ever really set boundaries for. That's life-changing. Like, that's a life-changing experience to see the positive effect of something like that. Can you give an example of like how it's like positively maybe adjusted some of your other relationships, like family members or someone that you had a relationship with through that and you evolved? What was the adjustment of boundaries?
Yeah, but before I answer that, one clarification I do want to make is, and I know you meant this like in a positive way, Mary, but I'm actually not saying that you have to be nice. I think like, I don't think I was. Like, I told her quite clearly the ways that she had hurt me, and I told her quite clearly the ways that I was like disappointed in her actions. And I also put the pressure on her to, own the narrative and like, lie if she wanted to, but like tell the truth if she was bigger than that. And so I don't think any of those things were nice. And I don't think you have to be nice. I just think you have to like do things in a way that would make you proud of yourself. And so like, I didn't at any point feel like I had to unnecessarily put her down or like, make her feel disgusting. I just had to frame the things that she did to me in a way that was true, and help her understand why it was damaging and why I feel the way that I do. And sorry, I just wanted to clarify that because like, I feel
dick.
like
you're saying be a dick.
Be the biggest asshole. No, I just like, I sort of grew up, despite like being a bully to Mary, I grew up really valuing being nice. And like, how can I, be a really like kind and nice person? And those are a part of the things that really prevented me from setting my own boundaries. Because sometimes the nicest thing to do is to take it all onto yourself, right? The nicest thing to do in that situation would have been to say, yes, we can absolutely be friends, and just bury all my feelings. So yeah, I feel passionately about that, which is like a segue into your question, which is like how it's impacted my relationships, because it's actually impacted my working relationships more than anything. The life lesson of like, hey, you can set boundaries and you can tell people how you feel has helped me just like be a decisive person. One of the things that I often did in any working relationship was just fucking say yes. I was like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, 100%. But understanding that like, hey, I have boundaries, I have limits, and I have conditions with which I will do my best work has helped me actually just communicate to like bosses that like, yeah, this isn't reasonable, this isn't possible, and like, here's what is. And that kind of clear communication has gotten me a lot further, because I'm like less liable to disappoint somebody, and like much more clear in like what will get done. And that's like really appreciated.
Which must also help you avoid burning out in a job as well.
100%. I still like try to do more than I can. And so like, I still have work to do with even identifying my own boundaries. But yeah, it's really big. And you know, like work shouldn't be the reason that you live 5 years less, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
1000%.
I
That's
love that.
wicked.
So then let's move on to our final question. We ask this question for like on every interview. So if you had any advice for your 20-year-old self or for 20-year-olds today, what would it be?
Oh man. Okay. You're going to start a podcast and I'm going to need you to I'm going to need you to screen record and upload to TikTok. No.
Oh my God, it's so good.
I think like if I was to go back and give 20-year-old me advice, I think I would just encourage them to like do the scarier thing a little bit more or a little bit sooner. I feel like, especially in my early 20s, I was really held back by fear. Bridget, we kind of talked about this where we were like, you know, the culture shock of Toronto. And I remember it was really funny is the day that everything changed for me was I had when we got selected for this show to go to Wales, I actually had an opportunity to get like a really big discounted flight, but I had to fly into London and I had to do it alone and I had to meet my friends in Wales or at a different station in London. And I was like, okay, I'm going to travel for the first time overseas alone. I'm going to jump on the subway in London. I'm going to jump on a tram in London to a different station. And I'm going to meet my friends at a spot at a time. And I was so fucking scared. But I remember like telling myself that the alternative was that I don't go. Like this was the only way that I could afford it. And so the alternative was that I don't go. And that was crazy to me. And I'm not even kidding because I'm such a child and we haven't talked about this, but like I thought about some of my like favorite cartoon heroes, like superheroes and like anime heroes. And I was like, man, every one of their stories is about like overcoming fear and adversity. And I was like, I like grew up understanding this. And so I really just like pushed myself to just be like, if it's scary, like you can handle it. People do this all the time. Like this isn't even like the hardest thing anybody has ever done. And yeah, I think if I went back in my 20s, I would want to like frame that in a way that I understood way, way earlier. I think I would have just opened myself up for way more opportunities to say yes to way more things, to learn more and to have more fun.
Nice. I love that. Great advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Anthony. If anybody wants to reach out to you or, you know, listen, you could also plug your podcast. Yeah, let us know how to do that.
Yeah, thank you both for having me. And yeah, if anybody wants to reach out, you can find me on Instagram, anthony.difeo, DIFEO. Or you can
Oh my gosh, do you ever sing that to the bingo song?
DIFEO.
I'm not gonna lie, I have never thought of that. I like
Really?
legitimately. Wow, that's gonna haunt me a little bit.
Yeah, you're never gonna get that out of your head. That's gonna live rent free in your head.
Ugh, I hate it. And if you want to hate something, you can listen to me descend into madness on Spotify or anywhere you get your podcast. 50 Weeks of Grey. It's a ridiculous time.